Hi everyone, my name is David. I'm 32 years old, and I own a chain of upscale restaurants in New York called Heritage. You might think that someone with such an accomplishment would come from a supportive family, parents who cheer you on, siblings who celebrate your victories, and relatives who brag about your success at every holiday dinner. But let me tell you something. Life isn't always as glossy or perfect as it seems on the surface. My story? It's messy, raw, and filled with moments where I questioned everything about myself. And if you've ever felt like the world was against you, or worse, like the people closest to you didn't believe in you, then maybe my journey will resonate with you. 6 years ago, things were different for me. Back then, I wasn't the proud owner of Heritage. Instead, I worked in finance, pulling in $120,000 a year, a salary most people could only dream of. On paper, I looked successful. I wore tailored suits, attended networking events, and had a shiny title next to my name. But deep down, I knew something was missing. For years, I dreamed of opening my own restaurant, a place where food wasn't just sustenance but an experience, a memory, a celebration of culture and passion. The problem? My family would never understand. To them, working in finance meant stability and prestige. Anything else? Well, let's just say they wouldn't see it as real success. The cracks started showing when two of my closest college friends approached me with an idea, a high-end restaurant right here in New York City. At first, I said no. How could I leave behind the safety net I'd built over 4 years? But the idea haunted me. Nights turned into restless hours spent staring at the ceiling, imagining what could be. Eventually, I made the leap. I quit my job and dove headfirst into this new chapter. What my family didn't know was that I also took a part-time gig as a server at a 5-star restaurant. Why? Because I wanted to learn the ropes, to understand every detail of running a fine dining establishment. I thought it would make me better prepared for the challenges ahead. But here's the thing. Secrets have a way of coming back to bite you. One evening, I attended a party hosted by my old company. It wasn't planned. I bumped into some former colleagues, and before I knew it, I was standing there, holding a drink, trying to blend in. That's when it happened. Someone spotted me. Wait, they said, pointing a finger. Didn't you used to work here? Weren't you the guy making 6 figures? Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Oh yeah, now I remember. He left to become a waiter? Seriously, their laughter echoed in my ears. What a waste. One person muttered loud enough for me to hear. He had so much potential. Another chimed in. Guess he couldn't hack it in the real world. Each word hit like a punch to the gut. I tried to laugh it off, to act like their words didn't matter. But inside, I felt shattered. Here I was, pouring my heart into a dream, sacrificing comfort and security, and all they saw was failure. They didn't care about my vision or the late nights I spent planning menus and studying culinary techniques. To them, I was just another cautionary tale, a man who threw away his future for nothing. That night, I drove home in silence, replaying their words over and over. Was I crazy to chase this dream? Would I ever prove them wrong? These questions haunted me, but they also fueled my determination. Deep down, I knew I couldn't go back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't imagine living a life where I wasn't true to myself. So I kept moving forward, even when the road felt impossibly steep. It was a typical Saturday afternoon when my world turned upside down. I was working at the restaurant, serving a group of guests who had just walked in. As I approached their table with menus in hand, I froze. There, sitting right in front of me, was Uncle James. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized me. For a moment, we both stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken tension. I tried to stay professional, forcing a smile and continuing with my duties as if nothing unusual was happening. But deep down, I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. Something told me this encounter wouldn't end quietly. Later that evening, after finishing my shift, I received a call from my father. His voice was sharp, cold, and clipped, every word dripping with anger. Get home. Now. It wasn't a request, it was an order. My heart sank as I realized what must have happened. When I arrived, the scene before me confirmed my worst fears. The entire family had gathered in the living room. My parents, Lincoln, Elena, and even some distant relatives I hadn't seen in months. The atmosphere was suffocating, heavy with judgmental stares and whispered accusations. Uncle James had done more than just recognize me. He'd taken a photo of me in my uniform and posted it on social media with a mocking caption. "Is this the talented nephew we once bragged about?" The post quickly gained traction, with comments pouring in from friends and acquaintances alike. Some laughed, others criticized, and a few even questioned how someone like me could embarrass such a respectable family. By the time I walked through the door, the damage was already done. My father didn't waste any time. He threw his phone at me, the screen displaying Uncle James's post. "What is this? Is this true? Are you really wasting your life like this?" he demanded, his voice rising with every word. Before I could respond, Lincoln chimed in, his tone laced with sarcasm. "I can't believe you threw away a six-figure salary for this? A waiter? Seriously, David?" Elena added fuel to the fire, shaking her head in disgust. "You're embarrassing all of us." But the most devastating blow came from my mother. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but her words cut deeper than any knife. "If you don't return to finance, I won't seek treatment anymore. Let me die. It's better than having a son who humiliates us like this." Tears streamed down her face, but instead of sympathy, I felt anger bubbling inside me. How could they reduce my dreams, my passion, to something so meaningless? Did they truly care about me, or was I just a trophy they wanted to show off? When it was finally my turn to speak, I tried to explain. "This isn't about failing," I said firmly. "I'm learning everything I need to build my own restaurant. This is just the beginning." But my words fell on deaf ears. Lincoln scoffed, dismissing my explanation as nonsense. Elena rolled her eyes, clearly uninterested. And then, my father delivered the final blow. In a voice colder than ice, he declared, "If you're not going back to your old job, don't ever step foot in this house again." Those words hit me like a freight train. For years, I had hoped for their approval, their understanding. But now, standing there amidst the chaos, I realized something painful yet liberating. I didn't need them. Their inability to see beyond titles and salaries revealed who they truly were, and it wasn't the loving family I had always imagined. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving behind a lifetime of expectations and judgments. That night, I made a silent vow to myself. I would live my life on my terms, without seeking validation from those who refused to understand me. After months of planning, sleepless nights, and pouring every ounce of energy into our dream, Anthony, Sophia, and I finally opened the doors to Heritage in Greenwich Village. It was supposed to be the culmination of everything we had worked for, a place where food wasn't just sustenance, but a celebration of life, culture, and passion. But if I've learned anything in this journey, it's that dreams don't come without scars. And trust me, those scars were about to pile up faster than we could have imagined. The first few weeks felt like a roller coaster. We had some early success. Guests raved about the ambience, the creativity of the dishes, and the attention to detail. Word started spreading, and reservations began filling up. For a moment, it felt like we were on top of the world. But then, disaster struck. One evening, during a particularly busy dinner service, a small fire broke out in the kitchen. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the damage was significant. Smoke filled the dining area, forcing us to evacuate everyone immediately. The next morning, as I stood staring at the charred remains of part of our kitchen, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Repairs would cost nearly $50,000, and we'd have to shut down for 2 weeks, a devastating blow for a new business struggling to establish itself. But that wasn't the end of our troubles. Just as we were getting back on our feet, rumors began circulating online. A rival restaurant owner, jealous of our growing popularity, started spreading lies that we used low-quality ingredients. Overnight, our reservation system was flooded with cancellations. Guests who had once praised us now questioned our integrity. I'll never forget the sinking feeling in my chest as I read messages from disappointed customers accusing us of cutting corners. It was a gut punch, not just because of the financial loss, but because it felt like everything we had built was being torn apart unfairly. I knew we couldn't sit idly by and let these accusations destroy us. So, I did something drastic. I personally visited every single person who had canceled their reservation. I showed up at their homes, offices, or wherever they agreed to meet. I apologized sincerely, explained what had happened, and promised to make things right. "If you give us another chance," I told them, "I guarantee you won't regret it." Some people slammed the door in my face. Others listened skeptically but eventually agreed to return. Slowly but surely, we began rebuilding trust. Anthony worked tirelessly behind the scenes to improve our PR strategy, while Sophia reached out to local influencers and food critics to highlight the quality of our ingredients and craftsmanship. It wasn't easy. Every day felt like a battle against forces beyond our control. There were nights when I sat alone in the empty restaurant after closing time, wondering if all this effort was worth it. Was I chasing something unattainable? Would my family ever see the value in what I was doing? These questions haunted me, but they also pushed me forward. I reminded myself why I had left the comfort of my finance job to create something meaningful, something that would outlast me. And slowly, things turned around. Our second year marked a turning point. Revenue stabilized, loyal customers returned, and word-of-mouth marketing brought in new patrons eager to experience what Heritage had to offer. By our third year, we had paid off the bank loan and recovered every penny we had invested. It was a proud milestone, but it didn't stop there. As demand grew, we expanded to 4 locations across New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. Each branch became a hub of culinary excellence, earning accolades from critics and VIP guests alike. Looking back, I realize how close we came to failure countless times. The fire, the rumors, the cancellations, they tested us in ways I couldn't have anticipated. But through sheer determination and teamwork, we not only survived, but thrived. Heritage wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a movement, a testament to resilience and vision. And though my family still refused to acknowledge my achievements, I found solace in knowing that I had created something extraordinary, not for them, but for myself. It was supposed to be just another routine visit to the Brooklyn branch of Heritage. I often made unannounced stops at my restaurants. It kept me grounded and connected to the heart of what we had built. That evening, however, everything changed in ways I could never have anticipated. As I walked through the bustling dining area, nodding politely at familiar faces, I suddenly froze mid-step. Sitting there in one of the VIP sections were my parents, Lincoln, Elena, and a few relatives I hadn't seen in years. My stomach dropped. Why were they here? And why now? I quickly composed myself and approached their table with as much professionalism as I could muster. Before I even reached them, Lincoln leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and smirked. So this is what became of that big project 6 years ago? Turns out you're just a restaurant manager after all. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled tightly and asked if everything was okay. Their expressions told me everything I needed to know. They weren't here for the food or the experience. They were here to judge. Moments later, my father chimed in, his voice dripping with disdain. If I'd known you worked here as a server, I wouldn't have come. It's embarrassing. My mother nodded vigorously, adding, having a child working as a waiter is shameful. Each word felt like a dagger piercing deeper into my chest. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could speak, Lincoln interrupted again. This time, he turned to Elena and whispered something urgent under his breath. She hesitated for a moment, then pulled out her phone and began dialing. Curiosity got the better of me. What are you doing? I asked sharply. Elena glanced up, guilt flashing across her face before she masked it with a smug smile. Oh, nothing important, she said dismissively. But I knew better. Later, when I reviewed the security footage, I discovered the truth. Lincoln had convinced her to call a reporter to expose me, spill the truth about how David, the once promising finance guy, had fallen so low as to become a mere waiter. The plan was to ruin my reputation, tarnish the name of Heritage, and humiliate me publicly. My blood boiled at the thought of how far they were willing to go to tear me down. But fate has a way of intervening when you least expect it. Just as Elena hung up the phone, the doors to the restaurant swung open, and Thomas Graham, CEO of Lincoln's financial firm, strode in. Dressed impeccably in a tailored gray suit, he commanded attention with every step. Lincoln immediately jumped to his feet, smoothing his blazer and plastering on a polished smile. "Boss, we've been waiting for you," he exclaimed, practically tripping over himself to greet Thomas. Thomas gave him a curt nod and extended his hand for a formal handshake. Then, without missing a beat, his gaze shifted toward me. A warm, genuine smile spread across his face as he walked straight to where I stood. "Well, if it isn't the owner of Heritage," he said, extending his hand. "It's been a while, David." The room fell silent. My family stared at us, jaws slack with disbelief. For a brief moment, Lincoln tried to insert himself into the conversation, pulling his chair closer and interrupting awkwardly. You know, Mr. Graham, David here used to work in finance too. Well, sort of. He left to pursue. His voice trailed off as Thomas coolly ignored him, focusing entirely on me. The look of sheer humiliation on Lincoln's face was priceless. I shook Thomas's hand firmly, maintaining my composure. Hello, Mr. Graham. It's good to see you. How have you been? My tone was calm, professional, but inside, I was seething. Watching Lincoln squirm under Thomas's indifference was both satisfying and infuriating. Here was the man who had spent years belittling me, now reduced to a stuttering mess because his boss refused to acknowledge him. As Thomas engaged me in conversation, asking about new menu additions and upcoming events, my family sat frozen in place. Their earlier smugness had vanished, replaced by shock and embarrassment. Even Elena seemed to shrink in her seat, clutching her purse nervously. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned completely. All those years of mockery, judgment, and disdain, they meant nothing now. What mattered was respect, integrity, and the hard work I had poured into building Heritage. And for the first time, my family saw it too. After Thomas Graham's arrival, the atmosphere in the VIP section shifted dramatically. My family's smugness dissolved into panic as they realized the gravity of their earlier words. Lincoln, who had been boasting about his position at Graham's firm just moments ago, now looked like a deer caught in headlights. But what happened next was something I never expected, and honestly, didn't want to see. As soon as Thomas excused himself to use the restroom, my mother rushed toward me, tears streaming down her face. She dropped to her knees, grabbing my hand with desperation. David, please don't do this, she pleaded, her voice trembling. You can't ruin your brother's career over this. You're destroying our entire family. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, not because they stirred guilt, but because they revealed how little they understood. To them, my success wasn't worth protecting unless it served their image or benefited Lincoln's standing. My father stepped in next, his tone softer but still laced with manipulation. Son, we were wrong to say those things. We're family. We should support each other. Let's put this behind us and move forward. He gestured toward the table where everyone sat, feigning unity. But I knew better. Their sudden change of heart wasn't about reconciliation. It was about damage control. Then came Uncle James, attempting to flex whatever influence he thought he had. He pulled out his phone and dialed someone, muttering under his breath. Moments later, he approached me, puffing out his chest. I've spoken to a friend who knows Thomas personally. He'll make sure nothing happens to Lincoln. You don't need to involve outsiders in family matters. His arrogance made my blood boil. Did he really think a call could undo the truth? But before I could respond, Thomas returned, his presence commanding immediate attention. Sensing the tension, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "Is everything all right here?" My family froze, their faces pale with fear. That's when I turned to Thomas and said calmly, "Everything's fine, sir. Just clearing up some misunderstandings." Once Thomas left the room again, my family doubled down on their attempts to win me over. Elena chimed in, her tone sickeningly sweet. "David, darling, why don't you comp the meal for us? It's a special occasion, after all." Lincoln followed up with a business proposal, suggesting we partner up to expand Heritage. "Think about it," he said, flashing a fake smile. "With my connections, we can take this restaurant chain global." Their audacity was staggering. Each word felt like another layer of disrespect, as if my hard work existed only to serve their selfish desires. I let them finish, savoring the irony of their desperation. Then, I leaned forward, my voice ice cold. "Let me make one thing clear. I owe none of you anything. If any of you stay here another minute trying to manipulate me, I'll send that video straight to Mr. Graham's inbox. And trust me, he won't hesitate to act on it." The room fell silent. Lincoln's face turned ghostly white, while Elena clutched her purse tighter, avoiding eye contact. My parents said nothing, their expressions hollow with defeat. Without another word, they paid their bill in full and walked out, heads bowed in shame. Not a single person dared to look back. After the confrontation at the Brooklyn restaurant, I made a decision that would change everything. I cut off all contact with my family. No more calls, no more visits, no more hoping they'd see me for who I truly was. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was necessary. For 6 years, I had sent them money, gifts, and silent gestures of goodwill, hoping they'd one day acknowledge my success. But after what happened that night, the insults, the manipulation, the sheer disdain, I realized something painful yet liberating. Their love had always come with conditions. And if I couldn't meet those conditions, then I wasn't worth their time. To mark this final chapter, I sent my mother a luxury jewelry set worth $2,000 on her birthday. Alongside it, I included a handwritten note. I stopped being your son 6 years ago. This is my last gift. I hope you'll cherish it. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of every unspoken hurt, every tear I'd swallowed in silence. I didn't send it out of anger or resentment. It was closure, a way to say goodbye without needing anything in return. But life has a cruel sense of irony. Just weeks later, as I was reviewing financial reports in my office, I received news that shook me to my core. My father had been diagnosed with a serious illness and required immediate surgery. The procedure was expensive, and my family reached out, not to reconcile, but to beg for money. At first, I felt a pang of guilt. Wasn't it my duty as a son to help? But then I remembered how they had treated me over the years, the constant judgment, the cold stares, the outright rejection when I needed support the most. If they truly loved me, they wouldn't have waited until desperation drove them to call. When Lincoln called, his voice was strained, almost pleading. "David, we need your help. Dad's condition is critical, and the hospital bills are piling up. Please, just this once," he trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "If you really cared about me," I replied firmly, "you wouldn't have treated me the way you did. You wouldn't have turned your backs on me when I needed you. This isn't about money. It's about respect." The conversation ended abruptly, and I knew they wouldn't reach out again. Still, the situation worsened when, days later, I received an email from a lawyer representing my family. They were suing me for damaging the family's reputation. Apparently, word had spread about the incident at the restaurant, and someone, likely Uncle James, decided to twist the narrative, painting me as the villain who humiliated our family name. Reading the email, I felt a mix of disbelief and fury. How could they stoop so low? Did they really think dragging me into court would solve anything? I hired a top-tier legal team immediately. Not only did we prepare to defend ourselves, but we also planned a counterattack. Using security footage, text messages, and documented instances of their mistreatment, I exposed the truth, not just to the lawyers, but to the world. I released a statement detailing how my family had dismissed my dreams, ridiculed my achievements, and tried to exploit my success only when it benefited them. The media picked up the story, and soon, public opinion turned against my family. Their attempts to tarnish my reputation backfired spectacularly. In the end, the lawsuit was dropped, and my family retreated into silence. As for me, I continued living life on my own terms, surrounded by people who genuinely respected and supported me. I built new relationships, ones rooted in mutual understanding and authenticity. Though cutting ties with my blood relatives was painful, it taught me an invaluable lesson. Family isn't defined by shared DNA. It's defined by unconditional love and respect. And sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love and respect. Real family doesn't demand you shrink yourself to fit their expectations. They don't measure your worth by titles, salaries, or societal standards. For years, I tried to prove myself to people who only saw me through the lens of what I could offer them: money, status, pride. But no matter how much I achieved, it was never enough for them. My restaurant empire, my success, my dreams, they meant nothing unless they aligned with their narrow vision of success. The day I walked away from my family wasn't easy. It felt like severing a part of myself, cutting ties with the very people who were supposed to cheer me on. But staying would have cost me something far more valuable: my dignity, my sense of self-worth. I realized that chasing someone else's approval is a losing battle. You can pour your heart into proving your value, but if they refuse to see it, all your efforts will be in vain. And so, I made peace with the fact that not everyone deserves a front-row seat to your life. Some people will never understand your sacrifices, your struggles, or the depth of your passion, and that's okay. To anyone reading this, I want to leave you with this. Never compromise who you are to gain someone else's validation. Your dreams, your values, your hard work, they matter, even if others can't see it. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your victories, support your growth, and love you not for what you achieve, but for who you are. Life is too short to spend it trying to convince those who refuse to listen. Walk away from toxicity, set boundaries, and build a circle of relationships rooted in authenticity. Because at the end of the day, true fulfillment comes from living unapologetically as yourself, not as the person others want you to be. Even after everything that happened, my family hasn't stopped trying to reach me. Every few weeks, they show up at the Brooklyn branch of Heritage, asking the staff if I'm around. But I've made it clear I don't want to see them. I gave strict instructions to my team. If they come, just say I'm not here. It's not about hiding. It's about protecting the peace I've fought so hard to build. Some relatives have spread rumors, calling me cold-hearted and ungrateful. Others, like Lincoln, still cling to the hope that I'll cave in and reconcile. But deep down, I know this isn't about forgiveness, it's about respect. And respect is something they've never given me. As I sit here reflecting on everything, I can't help but wonder, what would you do? If you were in my shoes, faced with years of judgment, rejection, and manipulation, would you choose to forgive? Would you walk back into their lives, hoping for a fresh start? Or would you quietly turn away, leaving the past where it belongs, behind you? For now, I've chosen silence. I've walked away, not out of hatred, but because sometimes letting go is the only way to heal. The road ahead is uncertain, and I don't know if I'll ever truly forgive them, or even if I want to. That's a question only time can answer. So, I leave it to you, the reader. What choice would you make? Share your thoughts below. I'd genuinely love to hear them.